All right, back in town, back at it. Got this 78, 79 twin reverb to recap, so we're gonna get started. And I've got a new camera and a new audio setup, and I'm hoping that I'm able to increase the quality of everything across the board, including those pesky S's people keep mentioning, without making things take a lot longer. So let's get all these nasty old ones out, and we'll pull this board and rebuild it properly. One of the challenges I have about recording audio, this is a good example of that, is that if I were just doing voiceover, I could focus on a big mic right in front of me, no extraneous sounds. But all these little transients from snipping wires make big spikes. I've got the lav mic actually mounted as an experiment to the brim of a ball cap, which should help keep the sound more consistent as I speak and as I move my head, because the mic will move with me. It's kind of a homebrew Janet Jackson setup. Miss Jackson if you're nasty. And we'll put the mic a little bit farther away from some of those transients. I will know soon on playback whether this has in fact helped. With my old setup, recording into the Samsung Galaxy, those transients were compressed along with everything else because I couldn't turn off the compression in the phone, even with the lav mic plugged into it. Now I'm not using the phone for audio at all, just for video, and I'm running into Logic, but I'm looking at the Logic waveform right now, and those transients are huge, so I'm gonna have to do something about that. Maybe just find and do a volume replacement thing where those things drop way the hell down in level, but every time I snip a wire, there's a transient. Every time I put a tool down, there's a transient. And it's just the intrusion of the actual work into the ideal presentation. Here's a great example of Fender trying to speed everything up by this period compared to the pre-69s. On the older, more desirable amps, say 63 to 69, the leads of the capacitors were also the connecting wires for the capacitors, which meant that they tucked those leads under the board. In addition to making the wiring easier at the factory that way, meant that those capacitors all wrapped down beneath the board on the other side for better mechanical support. On these later ones, everything's just tucked in place. You can see here this lead is just resting inside the solder joint. So let me get this out. We're going to rebuild this more like the 63 through 69 period, which is AB 763 and then the beginning of the drift. Well, now I've got all the filter caps in place. Nothing soldered yet, but you can see the leads tucked under. New jumpers on the board from the other side. Some 2 watts here, stock one here. I'd ordered some really nice Vichy caps for this, but the span was just not long enough. The leads were not long enough. I'll pick up some F&Ts on Monday morning that I know will span this distance, and we'll finish it up. But I can go ahead and put this back in place in the amp. Well, aside from these 2 caps, which I will put properly in place Monday, I'll temp in something for now on the inside of the amp where the other end of these blue and yellow wires go. That's no big deal. This will be operational for the rest of the testing. This is all looking good. A lot of shortened wire, less spaghetti. Everything's much neater. Silicone beneath the bodies of the caps. This will be nice and rock solid. Time to get started on all the cathode bypass caps. Some Fenders have the grounds shared. This one has some of them separated, some of them shared. This resistor here is not the proper value. And on this era, some of the bypass caps are over here. I'll be moving some of them to the board. It's a lot of fun to do these. But the important thing is that the board on this 79 is not just drowning in wax, so I don't think we're going to have any conductivity issues. So Let me get these out and we'll place the new ones in place. Okay, I said this was a twin reverb. It is not. This is a super reverb. Sorry, I've got both amps from pretty much the same year or the same period in, and I grabbed the wrong one. They have very similar parts. I realized my error when I got down to the output tubes, and there were only two. But anyway, I'm going to get started on the twin next, and they'll just both be in the same video because they both need to be done as soon as possible. There's screen grid resistors there. I was going to temp in 2 bias caps so I could fire this thing up, but between the fact that it's got a bad power cable and unreliable, and this non-original power switch here is running that AC hot really close to the chassis. Let's see if I can get it to focus. That's just crazy. We got a Carling switch in here and change that out. Anyway, I got the cathode bypass caps changed out. I'm still learning how to use the phone, sorry. A 3.3 nanofarad cap there instead of the 10, feeding the input to the phase inverter. Once I get this power switch changed out, those 2 new bias caps and a power cable, we'll fire this up, make sure it's sounding good. Let's go to the twin next. All right, now this is the twin, and it's going to get exactly the same stuff done to it. The same nasty snipping noises. Much better. Everything rebuilt just like the other one. Rock solid, a lot shorter wires. Time to go to the other caps in the amp. Alright, just like the other one, gotta replace these cathode bypass caps. This unbypassed reverb driver cathode will get replaced with a 2.2K with a 22 microfarad across it. The others are over here, much easier to get to on this one than on that 79 that had that weird large switch on the auxiliary jack. If I can speak, changing this one out to a 3.3 nanofarad as well, and I'll be changing the bias caps, tightening all the hardware, if not redoing those chassis grounds completely, and new screen grid stoppers, and new power cable, and I'll make sure that the wiring is all correct. Before I can remove these caps, I've got to get this wax out of the way, because if I go in there with the hot soldering iron out of the blue, all that wax will melt everywhere and make a horrible mess, and it'll get all down in the solder that I'm trying to rework. I can't really do this while filming because I can't really see what I'm doing, but I'm just basically gonna get the bulk of it out just with scraping it, maybe with a heat gun, out of the way, so when I solder, I'm not gonna be mixing that old wax down in with everything else that gets soldered. Maybe that's a better view. All the little chunks of wax that I broke out, I've got to get off the board before I can even heat that stuff up. Otherwise, just be a puddle of yuck. Well, here I removed as much of the wax as I could, and then removed all the components, and that remaining wax just melted out of the surrounding board, and so I have this big nasty puddle here, which is really hard to get the camera to focus on for some reason. Anyway, let me clean all this up and show you what it'll look like before I put new components in and resolder things. Alright, much better. The vast majority of wax has been cleaned up, all the old solders out, and now I can get a new solder joint, everything. It'll be metal to metal as opposed to metal to wax to metal to wax to metal to something else. Alright, new cathode bypass caps in place. A lot of wax removed to do that neatly. Putting those two there. New screen grid resistors on the output tubes. New bias caps. Haven't finalized the bias pot. I'm going to replace one of those fixed resistors with a trim pot, and then the value of the other resistor will change. But at this point, it should be safe to power on. So let's do that and hear what it's sounding like. All right, reverb, tremolo off, master on 10, bright switches off, treble, middle bass at noon. Here's the normal channel. Haven't played in about a week, so. Not getting that weird attack that I got from that Tone Master Deluxe. Didn't really expect to. No noise on the pots. Bright switch works just fine. Let's move to the reverb channel. Vibrato channel, as it says on the front. Bright switch is a little stiff, but it works. A little bit of crackle on that volume pot. A little bit of crackle on the mids. Just check the master volume. Check the pull boost. Works. Sucks, but it works. Not my favorite part of this era Fender. Let's look up a reverb tank and then check the tremolo. Well, there's no ticking. It's a little bit slower than I would like. The cap values in that LFO can drift. So can the resistors. I think it's probably more likely the caps, but it's working within the range of what they usually sound like, and the reverb seems okay. So really, the thing that's left is that slight rhythmic ticking sound way in the background. I don't know if you can even hear it but I can. And I imagine it's due to lead dress because the amp has got so much spaghetti wiring. They really used a lot of excess in this era. Let's see if I can make that nicer. Once I find it, I'll report back. This amp still needs a new power cable, but it's sounding remarkably good. If anything else shows up in my hunt for that ticking, I'll report back. But it'll get a new power cable, which I've shown a lot of times. One of the two resistors in series on the bias pot is going to get replaced with a trim pot. I've shown that a bunch. The amp is overall very healthy now, and I don't expect to have any real issues, but that ticking is driving me a little bit crazy because it should be quiet.